Welcome to the Startup Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Steven Trutter. After over 800 plus successful dental startups, I'm here to share everything I know about starting a profitable and purposeful dental practice with you. Welcome back to the Startup Dentist Podcast. I'm super stoked for today's discussion. Most recently, if you've been listening to the podcast here and you're getting ready to go down this journey of practice ownership, and you're thinking, how's this going to impact maybe my married life and family and things like that? Then definitely check out one of my most recent episodes where I interviewed Dr. Dan Dinowitz and his wife, Michelle. Dr. Dan's been a practice owner for about 18 months. And he talks about this journey, and Michelle joined it. It was just an awesome kind of back behind the scenes look at like, what are the demands on you as a doctor, you as a becoming a practice owner? What are the demands on you in terms of family life? And I think it's really a great understanding and to get firsthand experience. So definitely check out that episode. Today, we're talking directly to associates who are thinking about starting their own practice or becoming a practice owner through an acquisition. And I'm going to focus more on the startup side. So if you spend any time in the space, all right, you probably notice there's one thing pretty quickly. There's not a shortage of people that are consultants in our industry. Everyone promises growth, systems, freedom, profitability. I'll say this, but not all firms are created equal, and especially when it comes to startup practices. So today's episode is all about what should you be looking for in a consulting firm, and what questions should you be asking, and to avoid some expensive early mistakes. So if you're within 12 to 24 months, 1 to 2 years of thinking about opening, then this episode is definitely for you. So grab your notepad and let's make this dream practice of yours a living and breathing reality. So, all right, folks, I'm not only the host of the Startup Dentist Podcast and best-selling author on the Startup Dentist book, but I own Ideal Practices, and we are a startup consulting firm, and I'm passionate about startups. Folks, I have been doing this for 2 decades, probably been a part of over 1,000 startups, probably 500 acquisitions. And the funny thing is my journey of startups, it's so funny. My first job out of college was a startup business. When I got hired, I remember the first day, I think I went for the interview. It's a company in Chicago. And by the way, Bears, got my Bears hat there. We're going to bear down. Hopefully we get some good stuff coming here. Anyhow, coming from Illinois, but I remember there wasn't even paint on the doors of the conference room when I got hired by this company, and it was a startup company. I helped them start up 3 different branches. So I don't know. I have an affinity for startup businesses. I worked for my background. I worked for Bank of America. After that, I was in digital finance for over a decade. And so that wasn't necessarily a startup, but the vast majority of the clients I worked with were startup dental practices. Hence why I'm here. Hence why this is what I do, because I felt like there was a better path for startup practices. And also what I found was so many of my clients, especially when I was in the banking era, especially towards the kind of the latter half of my career, where like a lot of dentists are coming up to me saying, what do I do next? What should I do? And then I also saw, how, vendors in a lot of spaces take advantage of this situation. And listen, I think there's a lot of great vendors out there. I think there's a lot of great consulting firms out there. I think ultimately those that are in our industry have best interest in mind for our clients. At least I hope they do. Maybe I'm a little naive, but I just love startups. I'm passionate about it. And what I want is to provide the path that gets you as an associate dentist to that next level. I think of the same thing with my team members here at Ideal Practices. I want them to get to the next level. What are they looking for within their life? You as a practice owner. So I just happened to stumble upon dentistry. Not because I have a biology degree. I think I've said that story before, because I'm still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do with all the Krebs cycle stuff. But I don't know anything about dentistry from a perspective of like a clinical side, even with a biology degree. I do know number 15 because I have a crown on it. So there's my extent of clinical knowledge when it comes to dentistry. But I know how to set up dental practices. When you do something 1,000 times, you kind of know what you're doing. And so, what we set forth here at Ideal Practices was to set a system that wasn't about just ideas and thoughts, but it was like truly about like, how do we set up practices for success? How do we avoid the common pitfalls? So we're going to look into like
what do we do, but what you should be looking for and making sure when you start to surround yourself with the right team, what do you need to have? So the first and arguably most important thing to look for is, do they specialize in startups? So you need to understand what is the success of that startup. There's a lot of consulting firms. So I even make the distinction here at Ideal Practices. We are not a practice management firm. I think there's a lot of different firms that are out there. I know some great ones like Fortune Management that are awesome, and I know them very, very well, and really think highly of them. Different animal. We focus on different businesses. Companies like Fortune Management focus on dentists that are currently owners that want to either scale and need improvements within their practices. A lot of times fix problems. I want to prevent them. That's what we want to do. Ideal Practices, we want to prevent the problems from happening and have the foundation that is there to then be able to grow. So, if you're a dentist, this is the Startup Dentist podcast. So you're probably not listening if you've been in a practice owner for 20 years, but yeah, if you have, love to hear from you, but I can't help you because I don't have the systems that are there to be able to say, okay, if things are broken in your practice. So I always say, I want to be able to prevent, not just, I can't fix. I want to be able to prevent. And so I think that's a big thing that makes a big distinction out there, because there's a lot of people that are very knowledgeable about internal systems, about established practices, but they don't know how to take the idea and the concept of a practice to actually then build it. There's a massive difference between consulting for an established $2 million practice and helping a dentist go from 0 patients, 0 team, and 0 systems to opening day. Big, big difference. I think the other thing is our jobs here, especially at Ideal Practices, is we're not a Rolodex. What I mean by that is, are there third-party people that we need to bring in, whether it's an attorney or an accountant or people like that? Yeah, because I don't employ an attorney. I don't employ a real estate agent. I'm not a contractor, so my team doesn't show up with the tool belt on, and we don't swing hammers.
Hey there, Startup Dentist podcast listeners. It's Steven Trutter here, taking a quick break from today's episode to share something special with you. If you're dreaming of owning your own dental practice, then you need to get your hands on our Startup Dentist book. This isn't just any book. It's a 200-plus page comprehensive guide that covers everything you need to know to start a successful dental practice. From picking the perfect location to designing a patient-friendly office to building a marketing plan that draws in your ideal patients, we've got you covered. This book is packed with insider tips and real-world strategies.
But what a lot of times happens is the depth that exists with a lot of consultants goes down to the Rolodex names. You don't need a Rolodex. You can chat GPT and Google yourself to a way of figuring out who are contractors in your marketplace, or who's an attorney, or who's a real estate agent. That one could be a little bit harder in some cases, but there's some great national firms that are out there. The important part is, what do you do with them? What is the strategy? The same thing holds true in terms of demographics, for example. Demographics, typically, you've heard me rail on demographics. It's not numbers. It's not just ratios. It's understanding, how are those ratios related to you as a practice owner? Are these the right people? Are these the right numbers? Am I looking at them correctly? A report that says numbers, and then you're trying to decipher the code. If you don't know the code, then you don't know if this is a great marketplace. You may say, wow, great ratios. Okay, but there's no patients there that you love. They don't align with you clinically. That's where you need to have the person behind the scenes, the advisor, the consultant, to be able to say, this is what your demographics study says. This means to you. These are the kind of patients. This is aligned from a personal perspective, not just saying, here are the numbers, but analyzing it, saying, does this fit for you? There needs to be depth, not just go get a report, tell me what you think. That's a Rolodex. Financing, same thing. Got to have depth. There are a lot of great lenders out there. We have great relationships with lenders. The thing you need to have from a lending perspective is not just the bank. The bank doesn't have strategy on what you do with your funds. They say you're approved or you're not. If you are approved, these are the terms that you need to provide, the conditions of lending, the conditions of your approval, whatever you want to call them, your conditions in order to take the loan from us. Then they say, all right, we have an invoice. Now we need to pay it. Okay, that's all they do. They pay invoices. The bank says you're approved. Cool. Have fun with your loan. What we want to do, and what you need to look for is, can an advisor say, Now that we have an approval, now we need to strategize on all these different categories, because banks will say typically things like, here's your equipment budget, here's your working capital, and here's your construction. That's 3 categories. When we break out our categories with our online budgeting tool with each one of our clients, we have about 25 categories of budget, because everyone thinks about like the big things. Especially, like, I always give the analogy of like when you move, it's like, okay, furniture stat, beds stat, kitchen, plates and pots and pans and all that stuff is stat. And then it's like, where do we put all these other things? That's the stuff in a budget. If you don't have anybody that's giving you the guidance, here's what happens. You run out of funds, you overspend. Now it's like, how do I put all this together? Because the bank isn't going to say how you should spend the money or give you guidance on what you need to do, or are you going to run out of funds? They're just going to start paying bits. They're just going to pay bills to a point where they go, this doesn't work. You're out of money. That can't happen. You need guidance throughout the entire process, not just saying, here are 3 banks, tell me what you think. It's here are lenders, here's what you need to prepare to have those conversations on the front end so that you're in what we call on the silver platter for the banks. That's where our clients land. They're the banks, the B of A's, the Provides, the Huntingtons, the other big companies out there, Live Oaks and people like that. They love our clients. Why? Because they come prepared for the financing. We know exactly what they're looking for. We know exactly how to prepare those conversations. They get the best approvals. And more importantly, there's guidance so that in the middle of the project, we're strategizing on, hey, how do we shift funds? Hey, we need to take from this category move over here. This thing went up a little bit. Okay, we're going to shift this thing around. That's being proactive, not being reactive to a point where you run out of funds. Real estate. Yes, you need an agent. Yes, we work with great agents, but you need to have knowledge. It's not finding the space. It's when you find the space. You need to have somebody that's going to be behind the scenes that are going to help negotiate those elements for you. An agent, yes, they're there, but keep in mind, like, I'm not bashing agents. We work with a lot of great agents. Agents are paid when they transact, or excuse me, actually, when you transact. So who's behind the scenes? I want to make sure that, hey, listen, there's a commission that's out there going towards a commercial real estate agent. Awesome. You want to make sure that they earn it. What does that mean? Well, that they just don't go through the process. I remember years ago, and he's probably not listening, but Mike, our director of consulting, his nickname is the Bulldog when it comes to real estate, because one of our clients years ago gave us this lovely roast, if you will, on email, and gave us all these different names. Mike was the Bulldog. Mike is a bulldog, and and we've got team members behind the scenes, Mike, Todd, others, experts that have done this for years in real estate. So Mike is the bulldog because of real estate, because he goes, this is what you expect. So years ago, I remember Mike and I working on a client. It was like in the Carolinas, and it was kind of like one of those remote areas where, okay, don't have our team of real estate agents that had a footprint there. So in other words, we're like, okay, we need to find kind of a local person. So we found somebody, and we vetted them and everything. But a lot of agents, especially in these smaller marketplaces, it's about like, well, they want to have drinks afterwards with the other broker that's representing the landlord. So I remember there's a bunch of things, and this is the thing that we always do. There's a ton of even legal deal points that we want to negotiate into the LOI. Why? It beefs it up. Why do you want to spend more money on legal fees? Nothing against attorneys. I have 4 of them that do various things for me in personal life and business. I don't want to pay them anymore either. You don't need to pay people. You don't want to pay an attorney too much money, but at the same time, the more the deal sticks with the agents, the better the outcome is for you. That's what we look for. That is what we want to do, is making sure that you have the best outcome before the lease or that purchase agreement comes in. The more the deal sticks on the LOI, who's working on that? The agents. They don't get paid until the deal is done. So this weak LOI thing, kicking things just over and saying, hey, let's just get the lease over to the attorneys and let them do it, actually puts you in a much not in good posture, and not just like gentle posture in your operatory, but it doesn't put you in great posture, because now the attorneys go, all right, what did everybody negotiate? Now the bills are running on the attorney. So guess what? The more it's negotiated on the LOI, the beefier that is, the better off you're. And by the way, some of the largest commercial real estate firms that we've worked with over the past decade have adopted the things that we expect in LOI, even though they fought us in the beginning, because they realized, for the clients that we weren't working together on, non-ideal practices clients, they said, wow, This actually makes the process quicker, better for the client, better outcome, landlord, attorneys, everybody's on a better page when that lease gets done. So better to beat that up. All right. So back to my story. I digressed. Agent never worked with again. Obviously we said, hey, here's the things we want to have in the LOI. He said, well, we typically don't do things like that around here. Now, I'm from Chicago. Well, actually, I'm from Illinois, but I always say I'm from Chicago. I've done business in Chicago and in Philly and everywhere. When we hear that, I'm a small town. I'm from a small town rural area of Illinois, but I've worked in cities for years. When I heard that, it was like, all right, pal, gloves are off. And you're the person we brought in. And I responded and said, I think I was a little bit more colorful. I said, I don't give a crap how you think you do things there. This is our expectation. This is what needs to get done. And I said, I don't care if you piss off the broker. You guys can go have drinks later on when this deal's done, but the deal's going to be done the way that we expect. So get in line or get out. And he's like, okay. Most agents don't know how to push on these things. So it's about pushing on the deal. Equipment construction technology is a big thing. Again, back to the Rolodex. You can't just have somebody, an advisor or a consultant say, here are 3 equipment people. Here are 3 contractors. Here are 2 or 3 technology companies. Tell me what you think. That's not a strategy. You will lose control into those discussions. You will have zero. There is no budget at that point for these vendors. You need to have guidance on what needs to be done. We have a team of advisors that have 30, we have a team of advisors that do this. And that's not just touting us, but it's saying this is what needs to be guided into those discussions because these are the 2 biggest line items in your budget, equipment and construction, period. If those are out of whack, you're going to lose control. You're going to be paid a lot more. You're going to be overpaying. You're going to be buying equipment that you don't need. Your construction budget, especially in today's environment, construction is the biggest driver of budget today. Why have budgets gone up in startups in the last 3, 4, 5 years? Construction equipment goes up incrementally on an annual basis, but it's gone up exponentially in a lot of marketplaces in terms of construction. So everything needs to be fit into this. What do you need to talk about when you talk with equipment people? You need to talk about ergonomics. You need to talk about your delivery. You need to talk about what you need, not what you want. And that's the important part. You need to have somebody behind the scenes, an advisor that's saying, all right, this is how equipment people get paid. This is where the margins need to be. Here's where your budget needs to be. Here's how we get creative on how do we fit all this in. And especially when it comes to construction, it's how do we value engineer this? And more importantly, what's in the contract itself? What happens if there's a change order? We can't have those. That's a big thing. This is what happens on a lot of construction sites. Doctor goes on site, contractor's there, they start walking through, and then you, as the client, goes, yeah, I think I want to do that. Yeah, can we change that? Can we add that? Yeah, add some more of those things. Can you make that look like this? And the contractor's like, yeah, no problem. Just taking some notes, no problem. Hey, and then there's no communication. They just took what you said on the job site and go, done. And then at the end, when they said, hey, here's your final invoice, and you go, what's the extra $50,000? Oh, you remember those times that you're on site and you said you wanted those changes? Yeah, well, I made those. Oh, well, if you don't have a policy in place with your contractor in terms of small things like change orders, like they need to be in writing, they need to be approved, there needs to be an email trail, they cannot be authorized unless you say authorized, then you will find yourself at the end way over budget because you got loose-lipped. I know that's kind of like a little term. You got loose-lipped on your construction site. When you have guidance, that doesn't happen. When you have things in place with contractors, contracts that say, this is what the expectation is, here's what the pricing needs to be. It doesn't go up unless it's authorized here. Here's the warranty. Now you're protected. You also need to look at what is the timeline of elements within there. Well, and again, having a team of people is key because it's depth. A one-man band or one person can't handle all these things in terms of those areas. So it needs to be really have a fine-tooth comb. And in also understanding if something comes up in the middle of the project, what happens? What creates solution? I remember a few years ago, one of our clients, they were getting open. He was getting ready to open his doors, kind of like doing a dry run. And one of our equipment and construction advisors got a phone call. And I was on site, and I was like, "Oh man, it's Dr. Chris." Dr. Chris called, a little bit of a panic, and he said, hey, we have a problem. We flipped on our vacuum, and there's nothing but gravel coming through. Oh, that's not good. everybody was kind of like, oh geez, what do we do? What happened? Stepped in. We said, all right, here's what needs to be done. You need to do this. You need to look at these areas where typically in the plumbing that's underground. So this is underground plumbing, by the way, folks. Like, gravel is coming through. Why? There's either a cracked fitting or a cracked pipe. Typically, it's a fitting. We know where to look. We knew where to go and say, look in these particular areas. We got the floor plans and say, all right, here's what needs to be done. Where's that roadmap look like? Okay, it's going to be one of these 5 or 6 spots. That doesn't happen if there's not somebody going, how do we handle this? That's where you need to have that knowledge base, because those things do come up. I hope they never do. Our team of advisors, equipment construction advisors go, there will be a challenge. There will be a problem during construction. When it happens, we'll figure that solution out. It's not a fact of if, but it's more of when. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Maybe there's no bumps in the road, but a lot of times there are. It's just construction. There's a lot of different moving parts, literally and figuratively, that are there. Floor plans. Floor plans, I always say, don't take a free floor plan. Why? Because free floor plans come with a stipulation, which means you need to buy X amount of equipment from that distributor in order to get a free floor plan. Free, you know what that means, folks? How good is it going to be? There's a science to floor plans. You need to have an advisor that can actually do floor plans that actually knows the flow. And I'm talking about like science. The wrong floor plan will constrict growth. It will constrict production, sight lines, how patients need to travel, how your team needs to travel, bottlenecks, all these different things. If somebody's just like winging it, saying, hey, here's a floor plan because the lines worked and the boxes fit inside of this space, not good. It needs to be like managed within that, and it needs to be communicated properly, because then this goes to the contractor, to the architect. Having that communication is key as well, because that's the oversight that a consultant should be doing, is overviewing this, making sure like, are the lines of communication open? Is everything aligning in terms of the floor plan itself? Very, very clear. Systems, insurance credentialing. There's a lot of systems people out there, but I'll say it again. The systems for a $2 million practice that's already established is way different than trying to build them from scratch. What I love is I got a team of advisors on our startup MBA team. Most of them, the funny thing is that they came from that practice management world. And it was funny because a couple of my senior advisors there have said, I remember when they came on board, they go, I don't want to fix problems. I'm tired of working with established doctors that don't implement. They don't do what we tell them to do. We want to work with startups that are eager to learn. And I'll say this, folks, like our greatest success stories, they're not in rural areas. Well, I have some great success stories in rural areas, but they're not successful because they're in rural areas, or just simply because they're not successful because there's no dentist around them. Our greatest success stories are the greatest implementers, period. So don't think like you hire a consultant and a coin goes in the slot and out pops up the keys to your practice in 12 or 18 months. That doesn't work. It takes the collaboration, takes your implementation. When you sit down with a patient, by the way, you give them a treatment plan. If they don't follow what needs to be done, do they get the outcome? They do not. I'm very clear on this. I'm very transparent about like the realities of startups. There are ramp up timelines. There are overhead expenses. There is, what is the owner income? And it could vary. So, and I'll address some of those of a number of elements, but let's talk through some systems. And I'm going to go in more depth here on systems here on the next podcast episode, actually, with one of our clients about systems. So a little fortune telling there, a little foreshadowing. Here's the thing about systems. They make or break a practice, period. You need to have systems from day one. Does your advisor, does your consultant know about how to build systems from scratch? Do they know how to hire a team? What are the things you cannot do? Do they know how to set up the handbook within your practice? Do they understand what needs to be done in terms of building systems that will help create profitability? Because you as a practice owner, when the doors open for your practice, it will be the most stressful time of your life. You're going to be wearing multiple hats. You're the financial advisor, you're the doctor, you're the clinician, you're the HR person. Systems help eliminate or alleviate, let's use the word alleviate, chaos. That's what needs to be done. You're trying to create how do you alleviate the chaos from day one? And this, I'll tell you, there's a few people that know this well, and it is, you need to have systems from day one. Everything. What is a system, by the way? How do you take money? What's the patient experience from the time they enter in to the time that they have case acceptance? How do you answer the phone? All these things are pre-planned before the doors open. You can't just wait till the end and go, all right, how are we going to do this? How is this going to be done? This is the part that gets skipped a lot of times, especially with DIY approach. Is like everyone thinks about, because everyone's focused on like the getting open part. People have heard me talk about the 3P methodology: practice, profits, and purpose. Everyone talks about the practice. Most DIY people go, okay, I need to get open. I'm talking to the contractor, talking to the equipment people. Everything's getting open. Chairs are being delivered. Everything's going great. They take a deep breath and go, oh crap, I'm going to be opening in 30 or 60 days. I haven't done any marketing. I've done no ground marketing. I have no systems in place. I haven't hired anybody. I don't know how to hire people. What do I do? That's a tough place to be, folks. Do you have a team that knows how to do those things? Plan it out over months. When we're doing this, the building out the systems, it's a 4 to 6 month process. Yes, folks, 4 to 6 months of intense focus on building each element of the practice. How do you answer the phone? What are the financial guidelines? How do you communicate with team? What is the patient experience? What are the how do you get reviews? All these things. Insurances. Are you credentialed? Like all these things are important. And insurances and credentialing, like that's a part of the process. And you really need somebody that really knows that, and within a timeline. That's the big thing. A lot of people that do insurance credentialing and quote unquote negotiations, a lot of times it's like, it's an extended period of time. You may not have that 6 to 8 months. You may be open in 4 months, because once you secure space and construction starts, it might be a 4 to 6 month window. That needs to go through diligently so that you have an analysis of your fees, as well as making sure that you're actually in network if you're going in network from day one. Very, very important. Who is managing that? Is it you? Is it another team? Are you paying more money for that? Like, we do that in-house because why? Because we know exactly what needs to be done at the timeline in the communication that's there. So the other big thing is, as an owner of a startup consulting firm, I think there needs to be clear understanding of financial reality. I can't make promises of what anybody is going to produce or collect in the first 12 months. Here's the thing. That's why I say the ability, the success lies upon the implementation, right? If a consultant has great skills, has great elements and systems to follow, awesome. You need to follow those. Our greatest success stories are our greatest implementers. I brag about them all the time. But what I'm not going to do is promise and say, here's exactly what everyone is going to make. It all depends on a lot of different factors. So make sure, I can't promise something. Don't have someone promise you're going to have X amount of patients and things like that. But there needs to be a timeline. You need to have, what are the expectations? Be very realistic. I'm very realistic. People always ask about the overhead. I always say, real easy. The overhead of a startup is 100%. Don't focus on exactly what it should be, because everybody's overhead is going to be different, especially if you want to grow quickly. A lot of times your overhead is going to be higher. Naturally, it would be. I have a lot of clients where it's like, from a marketing budget perspective, we talk about bigger marketing budgets because of the faster growth that they want to obtain. So they don't fall in that 3 to 5% of collections number in terms of your marketing budget. That's going to be way higher, especially as a startup, because those numbers haven't normalized yet. A trustworthy firm, it helps you to plan for reality, not for fantasy, so that I want to make sure you're mentally and emotionally and financially prepared. You need to make sure that you have those conversations. What are the expectations? What kind of cash do I need to have on hand? What can I expect with this timeline? Listen, I'm going to hit you between the eyes and say, this is the reality. If you follow this, you could be very, very successful. Our average client, it becomes profitable in 3 to 6 months on average. See, folks, that's an average. Lots of variances that are there. The variance could be outside factors, but a lot of it is the implementation. Some of our greatest success stories are in major metropolitan areas where demographic ratios don't even matter. What they do is they connect with they followed a roadmap, and that's what needs to be done. You need to have a clear roadmap. Great startup consultants don't just give advice. They provide the roadmap. Here's what to expect. Here's what happens at 12 months, 6 months, the opening stage and everything. So I leave you with this is, what do you want from somebody to guide you down this path? If you're listening and you're thinking about like, I want to have a firm that's behind me, think about like, what are your expectations? But more importantly, what do you need from a team? It can't just be like, hey, they have a team. Do they have a team of experts that's going to give you the guidance? Or is it just like people that say, here are people that you need to call? You don't need a Rolodex, folks. That's not why our clients hire us. You need to have somebody that can have depth in those areas, protect you from the biggest pitfalls, so that when you open your doors, you are prepared mentally, prepared emotionally to be and be able to go down this path, and more importantly, push you. Now, I need you to be self-motivated as well. Like, this can't just be like, we care more about your practice than you. But there's going to be those times of uncertainty. We call those diving board moments or diving board conversations. When I was a kid, I grew up taking swim lessons at an early age. My parents were big on that. I grew up with like an above ground pool. My mom still has the same pool. Crazy. How about this story? Same pool is next to my mom's home, where my mom and dad built. My dad's deceased, but the same pool from 1981. Why? How do I remember 1981? Even though I was 4-ish years old. Okay, I'm giving a lot of detail here. Here's how. There's like the concrete slab where like the pool equipment filter and everything kind of sits on, and we all put our initials in there. And I remember the date, 1981. Same pool is sitting there. Anyhow, I digress. I learned swimming at an early age. I remember going to one of the colleges. They had this great indoor pool. And in the summertime, I took swim lessons starting at age like 3 or 4. It might have been earlier than that. And I remember the first time I went off the diving board, and I was scared out of my mind. And swim teacher was down here. I remember her name vividly as well. I had her for a couple summers in a row. And I remember like, okay, I can't do this. Now, keep in mind, this wasn't the high dive. This was like the low dive. So I might have been like, 2-3 feet above the water. I think I was 4 though. And I remember how I did it. I got down. I remember I scraped my shoulder, and I'm holding on to like the sides. And at that point, probably my feet were probably in the water, and I finally let go. First time ever. Woohoo. So I remember this story. So diving board. Now, why do I say that is why did I do it? Why did I finally release my hands? Because I think other kids are trying to pry my fingers off the diving board and try to shove me in. No, actually, because somebody was down there. My instructor was down there. Her name was Corrine. I remember her name because I always thought it was chlorine. I'm like, wow, you're a swim instructor? Your name is chlorine? Actually, it's Corrine. Anyhow, why did I let go? She was there. She was there and said, I got you. It was a big leap. Guess what, folks? You need to have somebody that's going to guide you on the big leaps. All right. Here's the big leaps. The first step. I'm ready to do this. I want somebody to help me. Come on board. The next big leap. Is this the right space? I'm getting ready to sign a lease or a purchase agreement. Biggest financial decision of my life. Big leap. Diving board moments. I'm getting ready to open my doors. I got 30 things that we need to get done. We got you. It's a leap. But guess what? If you have somebody that's there to help catch you, you can let go. You can jump off that diving board into those diving board moments. So, if you can tell, I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about you. I'm passionate about your ability to open up your own practice and be able to have the path to success quicker. That's what I want for you. That's why I have this company is, how do I get you from not being an associate anymore? One of the big things we celebrate here at Ideal Practices is we call it Freedom Day. And I love when doctors send videos or pictures and they go, it's the last day that I show up at my associate job. Nothing better. I love that day for each and every one of you and our clients. I wish it for you. And I'm super excited. So I'll leave you with this. Choosing firm, obviously, is more than credentials and branding. It's about the alignment of what you want, the experience of a team, and more importantly, trust. And trust is one of our core values here at Ideal Practices. You need to make sure that you have trust that's there. Take your time, ask hard questions, talk to current clients, and remember the right guidance early can save you years of stress later. That's what this is about. If today's episode was helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a colleague who's thinking about ownership. Check out any links and show notes don't check any show notes for any links and resources we talked about today. Next time, thank you for listening, because next time I'm going to have a client on talking about systems. I foreshadow that. We're going to go into the depth of systems. What are they? What happens when you don't have them? What exists? and making sure that you have the right systems for your practice from day one. She's the queen of systems. So I'll see you there. Thanks, everybody.
As we wrap up this episode, take a moment to picture yourself a year from now. Are you still in your associateship, or are you rocking it at your own dental practice, creating beautiful smiles and making a real difference? If that's the dream, it's time to chase it. Before we split, make sure to hit subscribe, drop a review, and give us your rating. It helps us keep bringing you the good stuff that you're into. Until we meet again, keep taking that next step towards your future practice. Here's to investing in your dreams and making them a reality.